The next part of the session is about the existing infrastructure. I mentioned early on that libraries in the U.S. and Canada have invested over the past couple centuries, 2 centuries, some of them, in development of collections that are incomparable, and that this is a massive legacy. A lot of those institutions have invested quite a bit too in infrastructure for the management and care and development of those collections. Off-site storage facilities, expanded storage facilities, great climate control, HVAC, good security, those kinds of things. It seems to me that we can use, there may be ways to exploit that infrastructure, that big historic investment in posing the solution to the long-term responsible management of print serials, print collections. So 2 people are going to talk with us about that today. Denise Hibay is first. Denise is Susan and Douglas Dillon, Head of Collections Development at the New York Public Library, and who has also actually worked closely with CRL for a very long time on area studies projects and development of area studies collections and preservation. So, Susan?
Thank you, Bernie. I'm grateful for this opportunity to discuss the meaning of stewardship in sustaining and building print collections for large public institutions such as NYPL, and to highlight the challenges and extraordinary opportunities we face in shifting to a shared collection environment. Our obligations as a library of record, a big print institution, as Bernie referred to us in a recent post, as an independent research library, and above all, as a public research library, remain a core part of our mission, written into our very nature as a library. Although the politics and issues we face may be unique to NYPL, all politics are local, right? My hope is that NYPL's commitment to ongoing collection management and greater sharing of its print legacy collections will resonate with this CRL community. Though politics may be local, shared stewardship of our collective collection is an issue of national concern. As we collectively move forward to secure, rightly manage, and share print collections, it's critical to do that in conversation with partners and other stakeholders. But first, before I dive into the details about a key strategic partnership and new initiative, specifically the Shared Collection at RECAP, which is the high-density off-site storage facility jointly owned and operated by Columbia, NYPL, and Princeton, allow me to put NYPL into context, as it may help highlight the challenges and opportunities large libraries face as they come together in the shared print environment. And I thank you, Deanna, for remembering our commitment to preservation activities. The New York Public Library has occupied a unique position among libraries since its incorporation more than 100 years ago. Its research collections number more than 45 million items, including approximately 10.5 million books. The scope of its collections, especially its retrospective and special collections, is often compared with the British Library, the Bibliothèque Nationale, and the Library of Congress. However, NYPL can never really match these libraries in terms of comprehensiveness, except perhaps in certain specialized areas, since it did not have direct depository responsibilities as these libraries. But for many years, especially prior to World War II, it shared a common mission to serve as a comprehensive library of record, meaning it would strive to collect the written word, as well as other documentation of civilization, including popular expression, to make these materials bibliographically and physically accessible, and to preserve its collection for future generations. While it never achieved complete comprehensiveness, NYPL has been able to amass collections spanning the depth and breadth of human knowledge to a remarkable degree. Of course, the scope of collecting has been refined over the years, often in collaboration with our peers, many of them who are here today. Yet we still continue to collect print extensively in key areas, both for future generations, in addition to meeting the needs of our current users. And like many other large research libraries, over time we've built up layers of formats, often duplicating, triplicating content in print, microfilm, and more digital copies, either licensed or created from our own collections. It's an overabundance of resources for our users who now navigate frequently between these materials. Although more often than not, and perhaps unlike most academic libraries, NYPL still serves as a print destination for many. In fact, for a number of subjects in foreign language collections, investigation of NYPL's collections is essential in order for a research project to be considered complete. However, a sobering conclusion from our last collection strategy review 10 years ago was that past comprehensive approach across multiple subjects and formats is unsustainable. I think that's no news for all of you. For example, a critical decision made at that time and endorsed by the library's trustees was to stop collecting research-level hard sciences, freeing us to focus instead on sustaining and building on NYPL's distinctive strengths in the humanities, selected social sciences, area studies, as well as its unique special collections. Fortunately, these decisions were taken just prior to the economic crisis of 2008. When returns on endowments went tumbling, NYPL already changed course and had a collection plan in place that focused its collections, its resources on area of strengths and high use. We continue to collect extensively in a wide range of subjects, but near comprehensive collecting is limited to certain specific areas, often narrowly defined. Therefore, like so many other libraries, we realize the path forward in collection building is through collaboration. In 2000, when RECAP was first formed, there was general agreement on the potential benefits of greater collaboration and sharing of collections. But it's only now, years later, that this idea is finally coming to fruition. The overarching goal of the Shared Collection Project is to transform the nature of RECAP partnership from joint operation of a shared facility to cooperative stewardship of a shared collection, the cost for which will be shared by the partners. For NYPL, RECAP now houses more than 5 million items, and for all partners, more than 13 million items, with capacity for much more. Currently, I believe up to 17 million and eventually 30 million, but who knows when we'll get there. NYPL's collection, like our partners, is primarily the long tail of the historical general collections. But since 2007, all new foreign language materials have had to be sent directly off-site. It appears we also made the right decisions. 88% of these items have never circulated, and current usage never exceeds 60,000 per year. Although we expect this could increase with better discovery and delivery mechanisms in place, as well as more users searching the collective collection. But before I move on to the topic of shared collection, let me point out one recent completion of a new capital project, a new storage stack underneath Bryant Park, which is adjacent to the Central Humanities and Social Sciences building. And I hope it's a little faint, but the two stacks underneath there, the bottom layer has just been completed. The Milstein research stacks, named in recognition of a generous donation from library trustee Abby Milstein and her husband Howard, was constructed also as a high-density, environmentally optimal storage facility. By the end of this year, 1.5 million items, primarily 20th century monographs published prior to the 1990s, currently in temporary storage, will be moved back to the library. The additional stack has capacity to store 2.5 million items in total, which our projections show will be reached in less than 10 years. The Milstein research stacks are clear evidence of NYPL's commitment to preserving its print collections and responding to local users' needs to have materials close at hand. In numerous surveys, researchers at NYPL have indicated again and again that the most important things to them are extended hours, quiet space, and collection materials. Optimal storage environments. The key foundation for preserving collections present us with unique opportunities. How can we leverage this infrastructure and the collections stored there in new and collaborative ways? From 2012 to 2013, with support from the Mellon Foundation, the partner institutions of RECAP began a planning project for a shared collection from among the materials they hold at the facility. The direct benefits of the shared collection include vastly expanded resources available to the patrons of each institution. We've estimated that each partner will receive or have access to an additional 5 to 6 million new items that aren't in any of our catalogs. There is also new opportunities for financial savings or significantly reallocated resources through coordinated and distributed collection development, and demonstrated new technology and policy models for the national network of shared print repositories. Partners will realize the first and second benefits by creating a single copy print archive managed jointly, to which patrons of all three libraries will have unmediated access. This means the patron will be able to discover and request the off-site item for delivery to their home library, regardless of the owning library. The item will then be borrowed under the loan rules of the patron's home library, governed by use restrictions that the owning library may have applied to the item. Gets a little complicated. During the planning phase, in addition to defining new governance and management policies, as well as cost-sharing models, the partners developed a high-level systems architecture. In other words, a technology solution that will support collection management and seamless discovery to delivery functions. We've now engaged in the second phase of the shared collection project, also generously supported by a grant from the Mellon Foundation, and to be completed by September 2017. In the current phase, the partners have engaged the company HTC Global Services to design and build a middleware system that, through the magic of APIs, will connect RECAP's inventory system to each library's ILS and provide real-time status of requests and deliveries. I won't go into the technical details here, but I encourage you to attend tomorrow's charrette session, at which Jake Nadal, the Executive Director of RECAP and the Shared Collection Project Manager, will speak further about the project's technical and logistical aspirations. The shared collection will be one of 3 categories of materials held at RECAP. The 2 other categories will include private collections, such as special collections that are not for sharing, and the open collection, which I'll return to in a minute. The shared collection includes materials that the owning library commits to manage according to agreed shared collection policies, including retention in perpetuity. I think this is an important point to emphasize, since there is deep concern that shared collections equate with extensive discarding of materials. The revised consortium agreement actually specifies that retention is, quote, for the life of the corporation, RECAP Inc., rather than a set time period, end quote. This gives a legal weight to the perpetual retention commitment, since the life of the corporation is not limited in duration, we hope. Returning to the concept of the open collection, since the goal of the shared collection is a single copy print archive, duplicate copies already in the facility or sent as intentional duplicates in the future will fall into the open collection, covered by the same unmediated access. As you can imagine, the open collection provides a degree of backup for each institution to manage materials that may have to be duplicated for various political reasons. For NYPL, this is an important provision, since unlike many academic libraries, it generally does not withdraw anything from its collection except under prescribed guidelines and conditions. The basic practice regarding general research collections was to withdraw an item that had been reformatted. However, this conservative approach was further codified in 1998, a statement of policy on the deaccession and disposition of library materials. The policy affirms that an original artifact and its microfilm surrogate should not be considered duplicates, but does allow for reformatted items that may no longer have a useful life to be withdrawn. And those things that don't have useful life are those types of things that someone mentioned earlier that had been found in Yale's collection. For NYPL, the best hope for managing the growth at RECAP and its collections in general will be through reducing duplication at the point of purchase rather than through discarding. Though partners, let me point out, have no plans for mass weeding of the RECAP collection. In addition, as more libraries come to rely on the RECAP shared collection, the question of the optimal number of print copies may be an area for ongoing deliberation and further study, especially monitoring its use and expanding in comparison to expanding digital collections. Each partner is thinking carefully about its collections. How can we be good stewards and at the same time share historical materials more freely? For example, we recently came to an understanding that in order for us to share the maximum number of materials stored at RECAP, we would have to develop use restrictions or ways to better safeguard fragile and poor condition materials, as well as items that normally don't circulate. In NYPL's case, this includes serials. Though we hope and expect to see most serial use will be delivered through EDDs. In NYPL's, we've determined use will happen in 3 ways then. Items may be borrowed, in-library use only, or supervised use. Clearly, with these types of use cases, there needs to be a high degree of trust among the partners. An unresolved area of tension among collection managers and curators at NYPL relates to this very issue of unmediated access to the legacy general collection, a collection that includes many unique historical documents, not necessarily high in value as artifacts, but valuable nonetheless and possibly in poor or fragile condition. The project has raised the internal debate once again about what constitutes rarity. What is due diligence when it comes to working scholar copies? Many of these items have been reformatted. This trepidation and caution is natural for NYPL, historically a closed-stack, on-site use library that moved away from considering itself a library of last resort for ILL only in the last 10 years. And it was only 5 years ago through our Marley initiative, that is the initiative with NYU and Columbia, that we began lending monographs in good condition to faculty and PhD students at Columbia and NYU, and to those qualified NYPL users, especially the CUNY Graduate Center community. One solution that may reduce the friction with lending historical materials and that interests all partners would be renewed efforts at mass digitization. NYPL is a Google library, and we actually continue to feed Google books. Google has identified at least 500,000 public domain materials still at NYPL that have not been digitized, and most likely a large portion of those are at RECAP. The condition of the shared collection copy is very important to us, and ideally we want to identify the best copy for the shared collection, even though the shared collection is not a dark archive. The partners have had preliminary discussions about the need to develop a condition validation process to review and tag materials as they are requested. At NYPL, this would initiate a new workflow to tag these records. And to support and contribute to the national efforts to identify and track shared copies, all partners will tag records in the appropriate mark field to designate it as a shared copy. I think it's obvious this is a huge project with the potential to influence the way other shared print collections and consortia provide discovery and access, and to transform the way we do collection development. The partners have only begun to imagine ways forward on collaborative collection development in the context of a single copy shared collection. We've laid a little groundwork through the work of the Slavic and Eastern European specialists at each library. They have formulated a distributed and collaborative approach that takes into account historical collecting strengths, endowments, and institutional priorities. Our hope is that a shared collection program at RECAP will reduce duplication, especially for lower used materials, but which are still essential to support research and scholarship. It's also tantalizing to think of how the benefits of the RECAP shared collection project will radiate out to other institutional partners and consortia as a means for more direct resource sharing and cooperation. For example, two local partners, Cornell through Columbia's Too Cool program and NYU through Marley, are both engaged with the RECAP partners on collaborative collection development initiative. The middleware solution can address the operational obstacles faced by these non-RECAP partners by surfacing the collection in more direct ways and for more direct enhanced services, possibly connecting these libraries in the future as clients of RECAP. But that is some time away. But yet, the complexity of the collaborative landscape, the overlapping partnerships with multiple networks, as I've highlighted, but that also include Borrow Direct, Tukol, Marley, as well as the area studies groups at CRL and other efforts by national level groups, make for a dizzying array of possibilities and agreements. How can we rationalize these overlapping efforts? Our preliminary discussions point to area studies as a key priority for all partners. How can we come to consensus on reducing duplication, that is, letting go of collecting, in order to reallocate resources to other forms of collecting, gray literature, print serials, web archiving, as well as building on other unique collection strengths? Each RECAP partner will retain ownership of items contributed to the shared collection. But what does ownership mean in the context of distributed collecting? What does this type of collecting do to the integrity of the owning library's collections? We have a lot of work ahead of us and have begun discussing a multi-phase approach to realizing our goals. A good portion of this work will involve not only new workflows and collecting policies, but a cultural shift at our institutions. For NYPL, it involves new access strategy, which extends our commitment to access in new and open ways. It's clear that as we move forward with our shared collection plan, we need to remain in dialogue with faculty and researchers and staff as well. And it's critical that we discuss the meaning of the RECAP shared collection within the broader network of shared print collections. Today is the beginning of that broader discussion. Thank you.
Thanks, Denise. And these people in New York are so smart. It's like, I think you've got half of it figured out now.
Midnight oil.
Yeah, you never sleep. Just a little caffeine. I think we have a couple minutes for questions for Denise. Marilyn?
Marilyn Myers, University of Houston. I was wondering about the narrative that you used to attract a donor to name your underground facilities, or your storage facilities.
This particular donor is a strong supporter of the research library mission at New York Public. So I wasn't privy to those behind the doors negotiations, but I think she's committed to our collections, committing to preserving them. And I want to say that, when it comes to the general collections, we were also a kind of large filmer. We were in the Brittle Books program for more than 10 years. But our strategy for preservation of the general collections now is first and foremost optimal storage facilities. And so I think she understood that strategy as well.